Welcome back. My name's Matt Reiners. I'm a co-founder of Eversound, and with me today is Pilar Carvajal, founder and CEO of Innovation Senior Living, to discuss the middle market. I've gotten to know Pilar a little bit over the last couple of years as we've frequented the same conferences, and I've seen her speak on multiple occasions. I do have to say her energy and dedication to improving quality of life is unmatched, and she is an absolute rock star in senior living. Her presence in itself is a breath of fresh air. Thanks so much for joining us today, Pilar.
Oh, thank you, Matt. Thanks for the introduction there.
Of course. I mean every word of it.
Thank you.
So Pilar, before we jump into it and kind of talking about the middle market, I think it would be great to kind of set up this conversation if you could just share a little bit about your experience.
Sure. So I've been in the senior living industry for a little over 20 years, and I started doing something very innovative. I didn't know it at the time, but I did my first project here in Miami where we licensed a very large public housing senior designated building into assisted living. And so there were seniors living in this building. They needed services. Typically, they were either passing away in their apartments without any help, or they were prematurely institutionalized in nursing homes. And so our model became a model for the nation. And we really proved the theory of true aging in place because we brought the license to where people lived. And I ultimately ended up in 23 states doing conversions of all sorts of public housing, multifamily, hotels. I did a trailer park once and converted that into assisted living. And so I did a lot of work on learning regulations across states, but I also got to know the Medicaid program and how to use it in every state in which we did these conversions. And in some cases, I also used the Section 8 program to subsidize rents. So I was all about serving this low-income senior that needed assisted living, but that didn't really have a place to go. And the way I did that was basically the resident would pay their Social Security check, and then we would look for these subsidies to supplement their payments. So when you put all those subsidies together, all of a sudden that person started to look a little bit more like a private pay resident. And I did that for about 15 years. We successfully brought 40 projects to market. My last projects were actually affordable housing licensed as assisted living. So these were new developments that we did in Indiana and Georgia. And it was that point I was like, I need to slow down a little bit and kind of rethink my business and what I wanted to do. And something that became very clear for me was serving the low-income senior. Although it's complicated because you have to put all these subsidies together, there was a big gap for the middle income senior. And I saw them repeatedly come to my product because they liked what we had to offer. It was a low priced option that focused on services and care versus all the bells and whistles of the physical plant. And I actually ended up starting a lot of adult daycare programs within my assisted livings because I had so much demand for what I was offering that I had to find ways to serve more and more people. So we have very effectively also incorporated adult daycares and offered that affordable option to people that wanted to be at home, but would come into a program for medication management or socialization, eat a meal, and then go back home. And so in 2016, I decided to take a departure from, it was a family business, and really start looking at the middle market. Now, I went to my first NIC conference in 2016, and I guess I'd been very sheltered from the industry with what I was doing. And when I showed up to the NIC and just realized, wow, the industry is doing something completely different to what I'm doing. Very high end, with all the bells and whistles. And I had really kind of a soul searching moment there. I was like, am I doing the wrong thing here? Should I be doing more of this high income stuff? And I said, no, I think I'm onto something. And then the NIC had this very large report about the forgotten middle in 2017. And I said, I knew it. I really knew this. And I had experience with that middle income senior many, many years before, and realized that they were really the most neglected of all demographics in from low to high income demographics out there. And so I kind of started building a management company and that served middle income seniors for the most part, always serving my low income seniors. And then for COVID, we really made a pivot to own and operate. So that's now our new direction, is instead of just operating our properties, we've partnered with an equity group, and we're going out there and buying properties that we will own and operate.
That's so exciting. And, you mentioned on the beginning that you were onto something pretty innovative at the beginning, which is a perfect name for innovation senior living.
There you go. I did that for a reason.
I'm onto it.
I didn't know it at the time, but yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, of course. And so I think when I was first introduced to this idea of helping and serving those in the middle market was actually at one of your talks. I can't remember the specific conference that it was at, but to me, it made so much sense, because it seems that, granted, I've been into communities that have all the bells and whistles where, the nicest room costs $15,000 a month to live in, which I can't afford that. I know no one in my family can afford that. So when you're thinking about what other operators, what are they missing, or what are they not thinking about that you might have already been thinking about, like, where is that opportunity to really help?
And I think to a certain degree, there's that idea that it's always been a mission of mine to serve that low. I call it the working class individual, that middle class individual. I just have always been focused on having that strong mission to serve them. And when you have a mission to serve them, you find a way to serve them. And that's really where you get creative and innovative about, how do I crack this nut? And so we found a very effective way to do that through public housing, subsidized housing, bringing services to them where they live. I think it's obviously with the study that came out about the forgotten middle, everyone's going to try and figure this out. Now, I kind of know how to do this already, so I'm kind of an expert on it, because that's all I've spent my years doing. And what I mean by that is, when you focus on streamlined operations, I don't have chefs. Many times I'm not hiring nurses on my payroll. My staff are, CNAs and med techs. There's a way to put these operations together that allow you to make them profitable, even though your revenues are less. I'm not getting $15,000 a month for a resident. I'm getting $2,500, $3,000. But I think as an industry, everyone needs to understand that the profits of these types of properties are not going to be like what the industry has been accustomed to. Okay. So that's going to be a hard hurdle to just face. But if you're able to expand this model, because the numbers are there demographically, that's where the potential profitability is. It's sheer numbers and serving not just the top of the triangle, but serving the middle of the triangle, right? And doing that over and over and over again. So it is, and people have talked about this, like in the hotel industry, you've got the Ritz-Carlton, which is what our senior living industry is really good at. And we got a couple of those Econo Lodges, which I'm really good at doing. But there's a lot of Courtyard Marriotts out there in terms of the hotel industry. And they figured it out. They figured out that that's where the numbers are. And they have found a standard product to serve that demographic. And we just have to get there as an industry. And there's different ways of doing it. There's different ways of doing it operationally. And there's different, you can talk about hotel conversions. Right now we're acquiring properties maybe that have faltered some way, serving another demographic and pivoting them to serve a low or working class middle income senior. If you're constructing, you have to look at multi-purposed rooms. I never ever had the luxury of $1 million theater plus a room to do this and a room to do that, and it's one room sometimes, and we got to make that work. And as long as you have the right programming, it's okay. Another big, point of where the industry needs to go in terms of middle market. What I've done is I partner a lot. So I bring a very robust program to the facility or the communities that I operate, but that programming isn't necessarily on my payroll. So I bring in, a lot of doctors to help support us. I bring in therapy. I bring in hospice, and I use those partners to help make our program as robust as possible. And I do also include adult daycare so that we can bring people from out in the community into assisted living to give it a look-see, because many times it's a very difficult thing to go from home and straight into an assisted living. So that adult daycare allows us to build the trust to then bring that individual in once they've gotten comfortable. So it's a multitude of things. And I think a lot of different people are going to try to crack this nut in different ways.
Yeah, and it makes total sense. And, and I think giving the opportunity for people to go in there with the adult day, makes it less scary, to your point, because, I think we all grow up with kind of this idea of what a senior living community nursing home is. You think of more of the clinical hospital setting and some of these situations. It's more of that, what does that social side look like, and really allowing for people to do that. And I'm curious,
the model is still very healthcare. I know we've talked about that in the past. So my models have been more healthcare than they've been hospitality. And I think the industry has been more hospitality and health than healthcare. And I think there's going to have to be a reckoning there of bringing those two ideas together.
Right. Yeah. And I think too, with the hospitality side, the other providers doing that, they're trying to get people to move in younger because they're trying to really have that be a thing. But it's that clinical care of like, how do we help those people that need it and are unable to do it in their home? And, my grandmother definitely experienced that herself. And I'm curious, so, the elephant in the room with being the pandemic over the last 12 months or, 14 months and continuing, how does that adjust or make you rethink the strategy or, maybe the priorities as you're kind of exploring it? Or does it even further confirm your thinking and doubling down on it?
Yeah, for me, it's a no-brainer. I mean, we didn't lose residents because a lot of our properties, like I said before, they're very healthcare oriented. So they were there because they needed us. There was no alternative. And I think that is a way to create a stickier relationship in a sense. If they need you, then you're not necessarily going to lose them as easily. But for me, I mean, I kept thinking of those seniors that were stuck at home with nobody. And we had to close down our adult daycare. So we saw those residents and the impact of being isolated at home directly. But we didn't lose any revenues from the resident themselves, because for those residents that had Medicaid, those monies kept coming in. So there was security from that aspect. And I just think that COVID has really impoverished a lot of people. And I think that now we're going to have even more demand for a product like what we have in terms of a middle market or that serves low-income seniors, because those whatever savings that people may have had or monies that they had squirreled away have been whittled down. So I think more than ever, there's no denying the fact that middle market is here to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're finding more and more providers trying to pop up and do it. I think I just saw an article today of the former CEO of Capital Senior Living is starting a company that's really trying to focus on the middle market as well. So, I think when you look back and you were kind of between that decision, if you're onto something or if you should not, hey, we can say 5 years back, you were definitely onto something. Yeah. And so I guess the final question here for you, Pilar, because it's been an awesome conversation. What would be 3 key takeaways you'd give to other senior living providers to guide them over the next year if they are exploring middle market? Of course, you don't have to give away all the trade secrets, but what would you say?
Number one.
Okay.
I'm happy to help. Obviously, this is a different product. And I think that that's what's got to be really thought through. You're not just taking what you have and like putting a different bow on it.
Right.
It really is going to take some re-engineering as to what you're doing. So, you know, the chef that is preparing your meals, I mean, that's not necessary in a middle income property. You know, like I was saying before, the bells and whistles around the physical plant, you need to, you know, bring those down. So I would say, you know, even bringing experts in to help you think through it, be they from the hotel industry, that has done this very well. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of people like me in senior living that can assist. But I would say educate yourself, take risks, because you might find something like I did by trying something new. And always keep that, learn about that middle income resident and what it is that they want, because it's going to be very different to that resident that you've been serving in the past, and get to know them and what they want, and the answers will be there as well.
I love it. And well, thank you so much for your time today, Pilar. I learned something new. I learned a few things here today, and I'm sure the listeners will as well. So thanks so much. And I hope to see you at a conference here sooner than later.
Okay, take care. Thanks, Matt.